Hello everyone, I'm Eternal Flame here, and today we're here with another video on the GOAT himself, Kashimo, right before he's about to battle Sukuna. This video is a little bit different from my last video. Where my last video I talked about why I'm so confident in Kashimo's curse technique, I want to use this video to discuss a few things. I want to use this video to discuss why Kashimo's curse technique is more than likely one-time use, what the binding vows I think Kashimo placed on his curse technique is, and most of all, what his curse technique is likely to be. However, if you like anime content like this, be sure to like and subscribe. We're on the path to 5K, and I also really want to take this chance to thank you all for the recent massive amount of growth that this channel has shown. Like, geez, it has been huge, and I'm really thankful to each and every one of you for being on the road with me on this path. But let's get straight into the video right now. So the first subject of this video I want to talk about is why Kashimo's curse technique is one-time use. Because this has been going around the fandom for a bit, and people questioning why his curse technique can only be used one time. I am a huge believer that Kashimo made it this way and made his technique one-time use for a reason. And that is because of something that has been revealed in the most recent chapter, and a similarity that I believe exists between Kashimo and Gojo Satoru. I personally believe that Kashimo was the Gojo of his era, the absolute strongest that no one could touch whatsoever. And this is best shown to me during the entire conversation between Kashimo and Kenjaku at the time, where when Kenjaku brings up the fact that Ryu has the highest output of all time and he might be a good opponent for Kashimo, Kashimo just feels like it's not worth it, and he goes on to ask, is this really the strongest sorcerer you know of? And that is where he talks about Sukuna. And you can see in Kashimo's eyes, he is bored. He does not think Ryu is going to be that much of a challenge. And I think the feats very well show that, considering people can actually make an argument that Kashimo without his curse technique can beat Ryu, let alone with his curse technique. Furthermore, Kenjaku is not even that much of a fight at that time for Kashimo. Now, I do want to say, I think Kenjaku right now would beat Kashimo without his curse technique, but this Kenjaku that was in the flashback is likely nowhere near as strong as the Kenjaku nowadays, because this Kenjaku doesn't have access to anti-gravity or have access to curse spirit manipulation. If we're being generous, they have access to blood manipulation, but I don't think that is enough against someone like Kashimo at that point. Furthermore, this was also around the time the Six Eyes user and Ascend Shadows user actually ended up fighting that Megami talked about, that had the mutual kill on each other that summoned Mahoraga. So the Zenin clan and Gojo clan did still exist at that time, and even they couldn't satisfy Kashimo. Now, I've pointed this out in the past, that Kashimo is probably the sorcerer most similar to Sukuna in terms of personality. And I want to say I was completely wrong. He's not the most similar to Sukuna, he is the most similar to Gojo in my personal opinion. In fact, what I think Kashimo is that Kashimo is what would happen if there was no Sukuna or Kenjaku in this era, if there was no one who shook things up and introduced the strongest again, where Kashimo would be in a place where he's just waiting for strong people to challenge him, and he'd eventually eliminate each and every single one of them because they don't have a big person to push them to evolve, and he'd never find anyone strong enough that he can throw everything up against. What Gojo was happy he died to. What Gojo was happy is the way he died. An opponent he could throw literally everything he had against them, which was Sukuna, instead of dying to sickness or old age. Both of the things that were speculating what Kashimo was about to die to before taking the deal with Kenjaku. And I think that these hints have been sprinkled all throughout the fight, with his entire desire to fight the strongest, but most of all, the one moment where everyone was considering if they should have jumped in and Kashimo was telling them all no, but for a different reason. And that was because he understood why Gojo was fighting. Unlike all of them, he made a very interesting line that I think is extremely interesting that should be looked at more, where he says, this fight is for Satoru Gojo's sake. Whatever happens, it would be wrong to intervene in the Viz translation. The way I see this is Kashimo understanding what Gojo has went through, being at the absolute strongest and the top and not having anyone to interfere, and this isn't a solo fight for the strongest. This isn't a matter of a fight for the world for them. Or well, it kinda is, but it isn't fully that. To them, it's a fight for the strongest and who truly gets to decide the strongest. It's a fight to decide their role in the world, and it's a fight to decide if their power can finally let them lay to ease and rest or not. For Gojo, it is a fight to finally decide if he can put down the role of being the strongest and the pressure that has always come with it, and for him to finally become Satoru Gojo. And this is something that Kashimo understands better than anyone, because he is someone who almost died unsatisfied if it wasn't for Kenjaku's existence. I also find it incredibly interesting that every single time that they start to strategize, especially around the time where they're trying to figure out what Mahoraga's ability is, Kashimo tells them that both abilities are possible, but it doesn't matter, and just to leave it at that. What I think this is Gege trying to articulate the fact that it is simply Kashimo is going in this fight with no care at all for how the abilities work, only wanting to figure it out in the moment and throw everything he has at Sukuna, similar to the goal that Gojo was going into this fight with, to get someone that Sukuna could throw everything towards. It was why Gojo ended up feeling so bad in the long run, because while Gojo did a lot of damage and was able to cause Sukuna a lot of cards to be lost, he wasn't able to put Sukuna into a state of needing to use absolutely everything. Sure, he could force Sukuna to evolve, but he couldn't force him to use absolutely everything because Sukuna didn't want to use everything. Because to Sukuna, the only thing that matters is losing and winning, and that is it. He doesn't care how he wins, so long as he does win. And I think that Kashimo is going to have the same goal in this fight, to try and force Sukuna to use everything while also dying in the process, finally getting that death he so claimed and craved up to this point. And so now that I got that out the way, I want to talk about what my theory is that Kashimo's binding vows are, because I think he actually has more than one binding vow on his technique, and even more than two. So what I think his first binding vow that he has on technique is it's a one-time use. That's an obvious one, it's confirmed, everyone knows about that either it's a technique being one-time use or the fact there's a binding vow on it. I think a lot of us disagree, it's more than likely a binding vow that is making it one-time use up to this point. And the second one is, it's going to cost him his life to use it. I think that one most people can agree with at this point as well, because Kashimo is likely going to end up using his life in the process, to use his life force as energy for the curse technique to truly make it reach its pinnacle and ultimate and perfect stage. I do believe he has a third binding vow on it as well, which that third binding vow is he will only be allowed to use his curse technique if he can see that the opponent is someone he absolutely needs to use his curse technique on. Not someone stronger than him, not someone he can work around, but someone who his only option will be to use his curse technique on, and I think that's going to be the case for Sukuna. So that does likely mean that Kashimo won't battle him at base at all, but I'm okay with that if I'm being honest with you. However, I do think that is going to be one of the binding vows necessary, where only he can use it on people he needs to use it on. Not people who are stronger than him yet he can still strategize, not people who he can figure out ways of fighting and working around with his lightning, but people that he needs to use it on are going to be the only option. Basically adding a third level of conditions and hardness just to make sure it's even more powerful, but he can also never use it without being able to see that the opponent is worthy. It's also why I believe he was waiting to see the actual result of the fight between Gojo and Sukuna, and more importantly why he's directly jumping in now to fight against Sukuna, because he knows the students are going to try and jump on to hunt against Sukuna, and while there's a chance that Sukuna right now can't be taken on by the students, there's also a chance they can be, and I doubt that, but at the same time Kashimo doesn't want to take that risk and gamble, so he's taking his chance now, because there's no way he can use his curse technique on any of the students and them actually be a good fight. Now, I do have a few theories on what Kashimo's curse technique is going to be, and I think we can completely eliminate the fact that his curse technique will not be related at all to his cursed energy trait. Considering the narrator literally calls him the Thunder God, I think for a fact it will be in some way, shape, or form related to the fact that he has lightning-based cursed energy. Now, in the past, I have given a few theories on what I think his curse technique will be, with my first theory being it's a lightning amp that will amp his speed and reaction time, the second being he has storm manipulation, and the final one being he can just make a large, massive lightning-based attack. And while I do think all three of these theories are going to come true and also be together, I think it's going to be a lot more. I think he's going to just end up being the Raijin, because I think the narrator called him the God of Lightning for a literal reason. I think he actually is the quite literal God of Lightning, I'm not going to lie. And the God of Lightning, being Raijin, also has access to several other abilities, being lightning, thunder, and storms in Japanese mythology. And I think he is going to have access to all of these as a result because he is called the God of Lightning. Now, this might be me reading a bit too much into one single line, I'll admit that. However, I do think that he is going to end up being the God of Lightning. Anyways, yeah, I can just imagine Kashimo doing things like launching a tornado at Sukuna that's coursing with lightning while he uses air step in order to keep himself in the air to avoid each of Sukuna's cleaves, and using the air pressure to figure out where the cleaves are coming from and sensing it through that. Because, like, I can imagine there are just so many cool things that Kashimo could potentially do with his technique, but we're going to have to wait and see. However, I don't think that this battle is just going to be an easy dub for Sukuna up to this point either, if I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I think Sukuna is going to end up getting pushed to his limits, and he's going to respect Kashimo just the same way he ended up respecting Gojo himself right after revealing something new that he ended up having to use in this fight. Now, I don't know if it's going to be his curse technique or not, but I do think both of them are going to end up dying satisfied, with Kashimo finally getting to join in the Death Club with Gojo, and Kashimo being able to die knowing that he gave his all against an opponent, was able to throw everything he had against an opponent, the death he wanted and the death that he agreed to join the culling games for. Not some easy death where Sukuna easily one-shots him. I don't think that is what's coming for Kashimo. I think Kashimo is going to fight Sukuna and use his curse technique to do incredibly well, and the Gojo of the past is finally going to be able to lay to rest, just like the Gojo of the now. However, that's just my thoughts on Kashimo, what Kashimo's curse technique is going to be, why I think Kashimo was the Gojo in the past, and why I think Kashimo is going to have more than just the condition of he can only use curse technique once. I'm curious what you guys think in the comment section below on my theory and on my discussion on why Kashimo was the Gojo of the Edo era. I want to see what you guys think in the comment section below though. I'm going to see y'all later. Peace.